Mike Tomlin is under contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers through the 2027 season. That's next on the Bleav in Steelers show. Today's episode of the Bleav in Steelers show is brought to you by betonline.ag. The NBA Finals, the NHL Stanley Cup Finals are well underway. If you want to place a bet on any of the action, betonline.ag is the place to do it. Spreads, player props, over-unders, everything. Casino games, there's blackjack, there's poker. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Use our promo code Bleav. You can see that on your screen right now. It is spelled BLEAV to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online. The game starts here. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. My name is Mark Bergin, flying solo today. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers got it done. We knew that it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when and not if. He's now under contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers through the 2027 season. Here's what all this means. Mike Tomlin is 52 years old. He's entering his 18th season with the Steelers. No losing seasons in his tenure. And the Steelers are going for the franchise NFL record, I should say. Steelers have an active streak of 20 straight non-losing seasons. They can tie the Cowboys, who had a streak from 1965 through 1985 for the NFL record. So that's what's at stake. And it's the lack of playoff success of what people are talking about. You got to go back to January of 2017 for the Steelers when they've last had a playoff win. The Steelers have lost 5 consecutive playoff games. But the thing you have to ask yourself, too, is who were Pittsburgh's quarterbacks? You had Ben at the end of his career. You had a season where Mason Rudolph battled it out with Duck Hodges. You had the failed Mitch Trubisky experiment. You had the past 2 years of injury-riddled Kenny Pickett. Mason Rudolph again at the end of this past season. Quarterback play hasn't been there to have the playoff success that you would need. At the same time, how much of that is Mike Tomlin responsible for? Here's what I'm going to say to all of this. When you look at the NFLPA and the scorecards that teams are given, the one category where the Steelers finished with an A grade, and this is coming from the players, is coaching, the head coaching position. Steelers got an A this past year with Mike Tomlin. The criticisms of Mike Tomlin don't come from the players because he's going to tell you how it is. And it's the reason he's lasted 18 seasons, no losing seasons, despite lack of playoff success the last several years. But when it comes to the players, he's as beloved as any coach in the league. He's also currently the longest tenured head coach in the NFL now that Bill Belichick's no longer in New England. So you have 18 entering year 18, 1 Super Bowl title, 2 Super Bowl appearances. I know that's been more than a decade, but to compare it, Tomlin's 52, Bill Belichick was 72. He had 24 seasons with the Patriots and 6 Super Bowls. And if Tomlin, with this contract extension, continues to have non-losing seasons, he will break Chuck Noll's record for all-time winningest head coach in Steelers franchise history. If he follows through with this contract, Tomlin will have coached for 21 seasons. Noll was the coach for 23 seasons. He had 4 Super Bowl titles, but Tomlin, if he just continues to do what he's done to this point, he'll hold that record for the Steelers franchise. And what a luxury it's been for the Steelers, considering the Steelers have had 3 head coaches since 1969. I want for you to think about how crazy that is. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. So those are the things that come to my mind when this deal was announced. Omar Khan said it would get done. Mike Tomlin said it would get done. And I also think that it appeals to players, maybe not this offseason, but future offseasons, to ensure, hey, Mike Tomlin's going to be there, because otherwise he would have been entering the final year of his deal as the team's head coach. But that doesn't prevent them from acquiring and getting a Russell Wilson, a Justin Fields, Patrick Queen, who just signed the most lucrative free agent contract in the history of the franchise, right? You don't bring a player of that caliber over without the assurance that Mike Tomlin's going to be there with his prowess and his ability as a defensive coach. Remember, he was a defensive backs coach, then a defensive coordinator before he became the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, certainly the offense has to be better than it has been, and that's why you bring in Arthur Smith. That's why Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are your quarterbacks, because that hasn't been there with the development of Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, who was the team's best quarterback this last year, and then Mitch Trubisky, who's just a failed experiment in Pittsburgh, period. So now it shifts to the players, and it shifts to me, the biggest question going into training camp is what's going on at the number 2 receiver position behind George Pickens. But entering year 18, no losing seasons. Think about how many teams would love to be in that situation that the Steelers have had in Mike Tomlin going into his 18th season with the team. And again, there is the frustration of the lack of playoff success. And that's why this season is huge for the Steelers. Because it was a confusing year last year. A 3-game losing streak followed by a rebound and a winning streak and a playoff berth where Kenny Pickett was benched. They said it was an injury, but he was benched in favor of Mason Rudolph, and you had to go with the hot hand. But the fact that Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky are no longer your quarterbacks, it's a really big unknown of what you got with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields this coming season. What you're going to have with Arthur Smith at the helm as your offensive coordinator. And again, entering year 18, Belichick had 24 seasons with the Patriots. The all-time record, longest tenured head coach for one team is Tom Landry. Spent 29 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. Almost 3 decades. And so Tomlin entering year 18, a lot at stake. And can you get your first playoff win since January 15th, 2017? I think that's the thing that you're going to point to of, was this contract extension successful? And another question I want you to ask yourself is, at age 52, certainly Mike Tomlin could go to a broadcast booth. Certainly he could go to another team. But how do you get back to that playoff success that is what they say the standard is the standard? That applies in the playoffs too. That applies in the playoffs too. How do you get back to playoff success? How do you do that? Because then the question I have is, if you don't, is this the final contract extension Mike Tomlin signs? So you got the 24 season, 25, 26, 27, the next 4 years. What does he accomplish in the playoffs in those next 4 years? What happens beyond this season? Because Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are only under contract for 1 season. And if it goes well, hopefully you'd be able to bring one, maybe if not both of them back. But the Steelers could be doing the same thing all over again at the quarterback position. And again, you've been frustrated with the lack of playoff success. Go look at who the Steelers quarterbacks have been since they last won a playoff game in January of 2017. Yes, I know Ben Roethlisberger is going to Canton, but at the end of his career, he was not the same dude as he was early on and in the middle of his career. Then you had the season where he got hurt, and you had Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges battling it out. You had Ben come back for the end of his career. You draft Kenny Pickett. You would hope that Mitch Trubisky could have been the bridge quarterback. Trubisky got benched 4 games in to his first year with the Steelers. Pickett battled injuries and was, let's be honest, mediocre at best. Even when he was playing as a rookie, wasn't asked to do too much. That development that you wanted in year 2, you could blame it on injuries, but 6 touchdown passes in a single season isn't going to cut it. It's the reason why Omar Khan trades him this past season. It's why you have a whole new quarterback room entering this year. So what does that look like? Not just this season, but I'm looking beyond this season. How can you have the continuity between these 4 things? And this is where I think a lot of teams have success at the highest level in the NFL. Stability with ownership, your front office or your general manager, your head coach, and your quarterback. It's a lot easier said than done to achieve success with those four things, but the Steelers traditionally have been very, very good. I would not quite say elite, but very good compared to the rest of the teams in the league. And that's why they haven't had a losing season now in almost 2 decades. So again, you're frustrated with the lack of playoff success, but think about how many other teams would love to be in that situation. And with Mike Tomlin at the helm, I don't care how if there's a talent discrepancy between the Steelers roster and the elite of the elite in the NFL, Mike Tomlin's always going to give you a shot. And I say that because when you go up against a team like the Baltimore Ravens, right? Team that made it deeper into the playoffs, a team that you thought might represent the AFC, and you've won 6 of 7 against your division rival, that's a lot has to do with the coaching of Mike Tomlin. And again, if we're just looking at quarterback play, while it's an oversimplification, the Steelers have been able to do more with less with Mike Tomlin at the helm. And that's not to look past the lack of playoff success, but that has a lot to do with what has he done with the hand that he's been dealt and how has he played that hand. And I challenge you to find a coach who's done it better at the NFL level, and then go look at what the players are saying when you look at what the NFLPA grade is. And that's the one category where the Pittsburgh Steelers finished with an A grade. It's Mike Tomlin. You don't hear the criticisms of Mike Tomlin coming from players that either are currently on the Steelers roster or were on the Steelers roster. It doesn't exist. And that has to do with his ability to coach, to develop, to mentor young players, to gain their respect, and to keep locker rooms and to keep teams fighting, even if they're not all that talented. I'm going to say one other thing. I've said this on this show before. The highest draft pick during the Mike Tomlin era was Devin Bush in 2019 with the 10th overall pick, and the Steelers had to trade up to get him. I remember there was a game several years ago where Mike Tomlin's talking with Chase Young on the sideline, and he had gotten selected by Washington, I Bleav, with the 2nd overall pick. He was a top 3 pick. And Mike Tomlin just looks at him and he's snickering and saying, "We don't get guys that look like you. We're not drafting high enough to get guys that look like you, that have the measurables, the strength, the size, the speed, everything that you look for with elite level talent in the NFL because of the success." And this is where, in certain circumstances, Mike Tomlin has been a victim of his own success. So again, I want you to think about it. Would you rather have him as your head coach where every other team would want him? When we talk to guys like John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, who's covered the NFL for almost 5 decades, who've told us here on the Bleav in Steelers show, hey, if the Steelers ever got rid of Mike Tomlin, he would be hired by sundown by one of the other 31 teams in the league. And the fact that he could be in a broadcast booth as an analyst somewhere else where it would be a lot less stressful than being an NFL head coach, I think speaks volumes for this franchise. Can't wait to see what the 2024 season entails for Mike Tomlin and this franchise and this team, and beyond that as well. How do you get back to winning Lombardis? How do you get closer to winning your 7th Super Bowl? A lot of it's going to be what this offense looks like this coming season as this defense gets older and older. Because Cam Hayward's going to be 35, TJ Watt's in his prime. You got to get Minkah Fitzpatrick back to form, because I don't know how much longer with this current configuration of how much money you're allocating to the defensive side of the football that they can continue to play elite. Can they still be very, very good, maybe borderline elite, and can the offense take a jump? That's what I'm looking for in 2024 when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And these are my thoughts about Mike Tomlin, now under contract through the 2027 season, the contract that I think he'll see throughout for the next 4 years. So do you win a playoff game? If you're watching this, the 2 questions I have. Do you win a playoff game? I would hope that the answer is yes. But then number 2, is this the final contract extension Mike Tomlin signs? Again, he's 52 years old. at this point? And is there a certain point where that same voice in the locker room grows stale among professionals? Because at the college level, you cycle in and out players every 4 or 5 years, if not sooner than that with the transfer portal now in college football. But professionally in the NFL, Mike Tomlin's achieved the highest success, but it's been more than a decade since they've hoisted the Lombardi Trophy. How do you get back to that? My name is Mark Bergin. Thank you so much for watching the Bleav in Steelers show. If you enjoyed listening, please go leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. On YouTube, please hit that subscribe button to help us out. Check the Bleav Network out. We've got 31 other shows covering all the NFL's teams. So show for all 32 teams. Check us out here on the Bleav Network. Thank you to today's presenting sponsor, betonline.ag. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, the rest of your work week. Ike Taylor and I will be back on this feed in the coming days. He's going to be at Steelers minicamp, so really excited to see what his observations are from being boots on the ground in Pittsburgh for that. So keep it here on Bleav in Steelers. I'll see you next time. My name is Mark Bergin. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great rest of your Tuesday and great rest of your week. I'll see you next time. Take care. So long, everybody.